Hello everyone, Arya here, and thank you for joining me once again as we dive into another sordid tale that involves the internet as we continue our exploration into the question of whether or not the worst monsters are no longer hiding in the dark, but are out here right in the light of the technology beaming into our faces. As always, I have to thank you wonderful viewers on the Unsolved network for submitting these cases for me to cover, and today's case is one that was submitted by one of you during one of our Twitch live streams. And it's very fascinating to me, this case, because not only is it a very recent one, but it also is our first case that involves TikTok, as today we'll be covering a murder perpetrated by teenager Zachary Latham in what some believe was an attempt to gain TikTok fame. TikTok is an app that I really don't understand, and for someone that works at a social media company, I probably should know a little bit more about it. I like scrolling and, I like watching the TikToks, and I do have a TikTok account of my own where I do, sometimes post my dancing. Just joking. Or am I? So for me, the idea of committing a murder for TikTok fame is, well, in a depressing way, actually not that surprising to me, considering, the state of society and social media right now. However, it doesn't make this any less jarring for me. So let's begin. Today, our story takes place in Vineland, New Jersey, a small city less than an hour outside of Philadelphia, in which William Durham Sr. and his family would go head-to-head with teenager Zachary Latham in a series of confrontations that would tragically turn fatal. However, the really interesting aspect of this case, which makes it a perfect fit for this series, is that the deadly actions are now being questioned as to whether they were self-defense or a ploy to become TikTok famous. Before we begin though, I have to give a huge shout out to the local journalists who covered this case and those like it. Honestly, with a lot of the cases I cover on this channel, it would be impossible to talk about them without mentioning the hard work of the local journalists who cover those stories. So thank you very much to all of them. I also have to mention that since this case is very recent, it's still open and the trial's still pending. So a lot of what I'm about to share with you is all just alleged at this point. I just need to say that so we don't get sued. Zachary was just 16 years old when the two feuding sides allegedly met for the first time. Zachary had just moved in with his grandparents, who were neighbors of the Durhams. According to lawyers for the Durham family, their initial encounter occurred when William, a 51-year-old corrections officer, approached Zachary about his driving in the neighborhood, which he deemed reckless. Now, it seems this didn't turn out to be that big of a deal, as Zachary reportedly went to the Durham family home to later apologize for his driving. But according to the Durham's lawyers, he didn't change his ways. Criminal teenagers. He's like that kid. What was that kid in that movie? What was a kid? What was that kid in that movie? Dennis the Menace. The feud really took off during a series of incidents beginning in April 2020 that would lead to an untimely end of one of the men. Now, it's important to note that all the details of the events leading up to the killing come from the Durham family lawyers, so all parties involved may not necessarily agree with what I'm about to share here. Just keep that in mind. Zachary, just turning 18 and now a National Guard private, filmed one altercation with William's wife Catherine, which he posted to TikTok. The video, in which he can be heard calling Catherine Karen, amassed some 3 million views. Reports note that the comments on the video suggested additional actions to take against Catherine, including slashing her tires or simply go after her. According to a letter from the Durham's lawyers, Latham drove up to the Durham's house a few days later while they were in the yard doing work and yelled, "Hey Karen, we went viral." We're just a page into the script and I already hate this kid. Little shit. On May 4th, 2020, things went from viral to deadly. According to a letter written by the Durham's lawyers, the altercation began when Zachary allegedly swerved his truck at the Durham's teenage son, who was riding a bicycle at the time. According to Zachary, however, he simply honked his horn at the boy and did not swerve at him. Later, William blocked Zachary's vehicle in the street with his own truck. At that point, Catherine began confronting Zachary for his actions towards her son and recorded the confrontation on her phone. According to the New York Times, Zachary is seen in footage throwing an elbow at Catherine, her phone being knocked from her hand and Zachary driving off rapidly, headed for his home. Things escalated further when the Durham's son then showed up at Zachary's home. Sarah, his wife, recorded them as they walked onto their property. According to a filing, Sarah told the sons that they better back up and that they're not going to like what's coming out. William arrived shortly after. According to the public defenders for Zachary, he and Sarah can both be clearly heard on the recording instructing the Durhams to get off their property, a point the prosecution also notes. According to the Cumberland County prosecutor, Zachary armed himself with a 4-inch knife and stun gun at this point, and he then fired the stun gun and swung the knife at one of the sons. The prosecution notes that the Durham's hands were visibly empty. At that point, William tried to grab Zachary, who then slashed him on the arm. Zachary then began to retreat into his garage with his friends, who happened to be in the back of his truck at the time of the encounter, and William followed them into the garage. What came next was described in the filing as a brief but violent melee. The stun gun was fired again, repeatedly. Sarah told Zachary to drop the knife, but William is struck with a knife under his armpit, which punctures his lung. According to the filing, it's believed this wound would prove to be deadly. Police arrived at the scene at 7:48 p.m., and William Durham Sr. was pronounced dead at 9:19 p.m. Zachary was taken to a medical center to be treated for the injuries he sustained, including a concussion and several abrasions. He was released from jail and allowed to remain free prior to the trial. I highly disagree with that choice to let him remain free. Zachary's public defender noted the great tragedy of the event, but stated that Zachary had acted in self-defense, noting, to a very, very fair extent, the Durhams visited this great sadness upon themselves. Zachary was also allowed to move to Florida while awaiting trial. Catherine and her sons also received charges from county prosecutors. Catherine was charged with simple assault and criminal trespass. Her sons, one minor and one adult, were charged with aggravated assault and criminal trespass. The whole thing is quite complicated. As Superior Court Judge Kristen P. Dorigo notes, this is a unique sort of case because the victims in one case are defendants in another case, where the victim in that case is the defendant in this case. In June 2020, the case took a strange turn when lawyers for the Durham family sent a letter to Cumberland County Prosecutor Jennifer Webb McRae, in which they claimed that Sarah Latham, Zachary's wife, recorded the encounter in order to post it and become TikTok famous. The lawyers claimed that for that reason, Zachary's actions could not have been self-defense and call for him to be charged with first-degree murder. In fact, the lawyers go as far as to claim that he intentionally lured the Durhams into the altercation, stating, if Latham was in fear for his or Sarah's safety, they both would have retreated inside, called police, and stayed there. They did not, because their intent was to lure the Durhams there, attack them, and record it for TikTok. So this is where the TikTok angle really comes into, and I'd love to hear what you guys think. All the time we see people doing all kinds of outlandish, stupid things, not just on TikTok, online, to get some degree of fame or infamy. Maybe their intention was never to commit murder. They just wanted to film some sort of altercation and it got out of hand. I don't know. Was Zachary Latham trying to get TikTok famous? Let me know what you think. Perhaps fueling the Durham's theory, Zachary, according to reports, commented on the case on social media, particularly on Instagram and TikTok. According to a friend of the Durhams, one commenter posted the family's address in the comment section of one of his TikToks, and Zachary would engage with commenters on his videos discussing the case. This is where it gets wild for me. This is why I'm saying I don't know why they let him free, they let him move out to another state, because here he is, he's actively engaging with TikTok followers, talking about a murder he committed. By the act of doing that, it seems like he's almost proud of it. Like if you were really remorseful about having killed someone, maybe you don't talk about it on Instagram and TikTok. If he's responding to people about the case, it seems like he likes the attention. And let me know if you guys agree with this or not, but I think to a degree some of his followers were culpable as well in the fact that they were kind of encouraging him to produce more content with his neighbors. Again, not surprising that there are people like egging someone on, saying, oh yeah, you gotta give us more content, give us more content. In August 2020, the county prosecutor's office filed a motion to stop all those involved from making statements in public forums, as concern for selecting an impartial jury grew. Assistant prosecutor Charles Wetstein noted Zachary's online commentary was not the only concern. He noted the letters between the Durham's lawyers and the prosecution, which had been made public, as well as interviews with the lawyers and family friends, as also a concern. A Superior Court judge approved the motion against Zachary, but denied the rest of the motion, but not without warning. Afterwards, the prosecution claimed that Zachary had created another TikTok account on which he continued to comment about the case. Take his phone away from him! And how stupid is this kid? I mean, here he is embroiled in a murder case where he's been explicitly warned and told stop commenting about this case, and he goes and creates another account to talk about it because he just loves the attention. Moron, whatever. He deserves whatever happens to him. Sorry, I have no patience for idiocy. Because of this, they filed another motion. This time it called for his release to be revoked, but before that could go any further, Zachary found himself once again in trouble with the law. On January 23rd, 2021, Zachary Latham was arrested in Fort Myers, Florida for allegedly threatening a motorist. According to the motorist, he was confronted near Southwest Florida International Airport by a man who tried to ram his vehicle and then revealed a firearm. State troopers were able to track down the vehicle and pulled it over. Inside, they found Zachary Latham along with an airsoft BB gun, which resembled an AK-47. Zachary was subsequently arrested and charged with 2 counts of aggravated assault. Once for aggravated assault with intent to commit a felony, and once for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon without intent to kill. I mean, unsurprising. Did I or did I not say that they should not have let this little shit out of their sight? Also, there's more proof that he's a goddamn moron. You know what I just realized is probably why I'm so annoyed with Zachary in particular? He kind of reminds me of like those YouTube pranksters. This is like that to an extreme degree. This was a guy who was trying to film an altercation with his neighbor that resulted in a murder just so he could get attention. And I hated watching those YouTube pranksters back in the day, and this just reminds me of that. Yeah, that explains why I'm annoyed. On March 1st, 2021, it was announced that Zachary was indicted on charges of aggravated assault, possession of a weapon for an unlawful purpose, unlawful possession of a weapon, and reckless manslaughter in the New Jersey case. According to Webb McRae, the county prosecutor, the grand jury was given all theories of homicide that applied, and they chose reckless manslaughter as the charge. Zachary's release prior to the trial was revoked in February after the Florida incident, and he's being held in Florida until he can be extradited back to New Jersey, although it's worth noting that it looks like it just might have happened. Well, there you go. Another not so fun case about how social media and the internet is causing terrible things to happen. Thanks for watching, everyone. I appreciate your time. As always, if you have a case you'd like me to cover in a future video, please be sure to leave me a little message in my inbox, a cheeky little DM, and I will be sure to read every single one. And hopefully, maybe in the future, one of your stories will be the one covered here on the Unsolved Network. Either way, as always, thank you so much for your time and stay safe online.